wanting to tackle this particular story because basketball was the sport that I played. I've been an NBA fan since probably since like 1992. So over 30 years. I know I look like a kid, but I'm really that old. And so I've been watching basketball for a long time, and I've witnessed how this game has evolved. And it's evolved in very different ways because one thing about basketball is that there are significant ties into culture. And obviously hip hop culture has played a significant role in, the connection between those two worlds, between basketball and hip hop music. That has always been a thing, probably since the mid 90s, but obviously it really came into existence on a national and even global scale when Allen Iverson became a megastar in the NBA. And
what year was that?
Probably like 1999.
So, okay. All right. That's my point. This is after the Jordan era.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. That's
right after the Jordan era ended.
That's what I'm
so, one could argue that the decisions that were made over the course of that time were extremely, you want to say, as far as from a business standpoint, they were very carefully choreographed in terms of how they were going to handle maintaining some semblance of high ratings post-Jordan, which, as many of you know, post-Jordan, it was never the same.
There was a slump.
Significant slump. It never really recovered. Now, granted, LeBron has helped and other players have helped, but it will never compare to that era. Now, of course, in the immediacy following the Jordan era, it is very easy to understand why things, whether it was the NBA Finals ratings, any of that stuff, it was noticeable how much of a slump was actually there. And so whether the NBA consciously or unconsciously decided that they were going to formulate this type of marriage, if you will, with hip-hop culture and allowing Allen Iverson to basically be the face of the NBA, whether that was the way he talked, the way he dressed, the way he presented himself, with his clothing, with his tattoos.
It did tend to get, yes, because like when I think back to like the days of, Larry Bird or Michael Jordan, it was pretty clean cut looking.
It was never like that.
It was very clean cut. I remember the first person I remember noticing that I thought was kind of really out there and was like Sprewell. And wasn't he the one who like strangled his coach or something? Right. And I remember thinking that even when Scottie Pippen, I think, even got busted for having like some sort of firearm in the back of his truck.
That is correct,
that was
because when you were at Northwestern, this was back in 94, 95.
Right,
Scottie got
he got busted.
He got busted because he had an unregistered firearm in his car. Now, of course,
this was huge.
Yeah. Now, Scottie Pippen is, he's compared to just about anybody else. He's about as straight-laced as it gets. But even then, that was a huge deal. Today.
Right. That's my point, is that this isn't like that. I don't understand all right. So tell me what happened with this guy.
I'm trying to bring the conversation full circle. So over the course of Iverson's ascendancy to the top, particularly the 2001 season when he won the league MVP, there was such a cultural shift in people copying him and people getting the cornrows and getting the tattoos and starting to wear extremely baggy clothing on the sideline, which made them look like they were either gang affiliated or hip hop affiliated.
See, I don't agree with these things.
I'm only telling you the perception that was being put out there. The do-rag, the long clothes, the super sagging pants to their jock, if you will.
Well, a lot of people still do that, but and I don't particularly care for that look. But I would say that also, just because somebody does something, and it gives a sign to other people that, oh my God, this is now acceptable. We can now do what we want and be more ourselves. I don't know that that's the same as copying said person.
The problem, of course, is that when you come from the streets, like a lot of guys ultimately come from, and now you're flipping the story on its head, which is these guys are not from the streets anymore, even though they want to project that to the people that they came from, making them think that they're still there. These guys are multimillionaires many times over. They may not feel comfortable wearing a suit and tie, but when you are in the public spotlight, especially as a professional athlete, you are a role model, whether you like it or not. And I'm not the moral authority police here trying to tell people how they should and shouldn't conduct themselves. But there is an argument to be made in terms of when you are at that level and how you do conduct yourself in public. And as was the case with Iverson and many others that followed, they didn't care. They conducted themselves in such a gratuitously poor way that it led to the malice at the palace, or was that what it is?
But this is one of the reasons why I ended up loving the Spurs as much as I did, because they were the most clean-cut,
straight-laced team that people didn't like because they didn't have any of those types of personalities.
That's so interesting.
And yet they won 4 titles in 8 years.
Now, in all fairness to me, I did live in San Antonio at the time.
Sure.
It wasn't like I just jumped on a band. I was living there. It was really nice, but that was a very clean. But Pop wouldn't tolerate that.
No, he tolerated winning. And so for a lot of other franchises, and again, this all stems, in my opinion, from Tim Duncan, who 1,000%, and David Robinson.
Oh, yeah.
Who, again, David Robinson and Greg Popovich were in the Naval Academy. And so there was a level of respect that was there, that was commanded.
Hence the admirable.
And do not forget.
The admiral.
And do not forget that San Antonio is a very military-based city. And so there was this level of professionalism and respect that was commanded of the San Antonio Spurs.
Still is.
Whereas other teams did not have that. And you know what? It was reflective in whether they won or not. And the Spurs won, and Tim Duncan is one of the greatest forwards that's ever played the game.
He's extremely humble.
He is. And that's his record. Whereas for a lot of other guys, they don't have that.
I was just doing a contrast between the type of people you're talking about. I compare to people like David Robinson.
So what does Allen Iverson have? He has an MVP trophy. He had one amazing run that year that led to an NBA Finals berth. And since then, he had been in the playoffs a handful of times and never made it past the second round. All
right, so let's bring it to this guy today.
So where we come full circle today, and there have been many problems as it has been in the NBA, Ja Morant, in a lot of ways, embodies Allen Iverson. Now, he may not talk like him. He may not necessarily get in trouble with the law the way that Iverson used to. But what you do have is a budding superstar who is an amazing talent if you've ever seen him play. But for some reason...
What position does he play?
He's technically a point guard, you would call him. And so it is what you call thug culture. And the reason I say that is because there are people right now who are trying to compare the behavior of Ja Morant flashing his gun to white gun culture. Let me explain something for people who do not understand the difference between urban and rural gun culture. People who flash guns in rural gun culture are not doing it because they're trying to scare people. They're doing it because they believe in the Second Amendment, and they are warning you not to come onto their property, to basically tell you that I am armed, and yes, I would be dangerous for you if you tried to bring harm to my family.
I don't know why. I'm not understanding this whole comparison. I think that flashing guns is flashing guns.
The difference, of course, is that when you marry the flashing of guns with hip hop culture, which constantly talks about violence, rape, all these types of things.
These are all sounding like additional facts. So I want to know what exactly happened with this guy. I feel like what happened with this? What happened? I'm going
to pull up a clip of Rich Eisen, who I think will be able to explain this pretty well.
The facts of this.
Of exactly what went down and why this is so bad. Because the reason this is so bad for Ja Morant, and now bringing this conversation full circle, this is not the first time this happened. This happened earlier this season, where he was at a strip club packing a gun and ultimately got in trouble for that and got suspended for a significant period of time during the season and ultimately broke the locker room with the Memphis Grizzlies. They ended up getting knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. And as soon as their season is over, he gets caught up with this shit all over again. This guy has a contract that is basically worth $250 million, and he's going to piss it all away. So let Rich Eisen explain exactly why.
There are foreign countries telling people, be careful going to the United States. You might die due to gun violence. That's happening right now. We all know what's happening in our world. We all know. And you know how I feel about this subject matter. I have spoken about it constantly. for Ja Morant to be suspended for what he was suspended for, and then to show up on an Instagram live video on the account of his friend who had been banned from his home games because of his friend's actions, stepping on the court to confront Pacers players. He had to be removed from the arena, was banned from returning to the arena as a patron. And then the Pacers reporting to the NBA and its security department that red lasers were being flashed on its bus, on their bus, and they were wondering if this could have been something to do with this scenario, this situation. For him to show up on that guy's account, for him to be hanging out with the guy after everything that happened, and then to appear on his Instagram live feed. And if you see the video, his friend's phone just flashes and you see Morant. You could freeze frame it. You see Morant sitting in the passenger seat, which is obviously how I'll refer to this with firearms involved. He's sitting in the passenger seat and a huge ass handgun. I saw that. I'm like, get out of here. And then I said, the league has got to think that as well. Get out. Get out. We gave you 8 games and it was, and we let you go down to the state of Florida and figure it out. However you talked about it, however you went through your process mentally and were allowed to return. I don't know. I honestly, he clearly does not get it. And what he can get is 9 figures of money and fame and fortune and showing everyone how it's done. He has that opportunity. And what he's doing right now is he is flushing it down the toilet. I don't get it. I don't understand it. It's a damn shame. And the Grizzlies suspended him. I think the league's going to come in on top of it. And they should. They should. Because for him to say, as Jeff in Detroit said, to Jalen Rose, wasn't my gun. I need to make better decisions off the court. And this is what he's doing. This is the story on Mother's Day. So I think the league is going to act, and it's going to act very strongly. And then we'll see what happens. Like, he comes back and then what? Because the then what is what will lead his way to the path to fame and fortune. Well, he's already infamous now. And the Hall of Fame. He's blown it all. Someone who he respects and loves has got to sit him down and say, you are blowing this, pal. And for what? For what? Like, you can't tell your friend we've got to separate right now.
Yo, man, we got to chill out.
We got to chill out.
Yeah.
Catch the Rich Eisen show every single day on the
I don't really have that much of the same position on this, but I am surprised that the NBA takes that stuff much more seriously than the NFL does. That's for sure. The NFL would just throw, they'd maybe like tap him on the wrist and then give him a raise.
There's a lot of people who do not want to see young black men, especially from urban plighted culture, succeed. There is a resentment that goes on within their culture and their community. It happens with rappers, they get killed. It happens with athletes, they get killed. So when somebody in the media is going to defend Ja Morant again for what he did and say, well, how come you don't have the same reaction when, Thomas Massey is flashing, an AR-15?
Actually, I do have that reaction. Actually, I do. I think it's absurd. I think that anybody who feels the need to take photos and show their weapons, especially people that are in elected positions, that's just absurd.
Oh, no, I agree. It's absurd. But there is a different context. There is different context.
I think that is where you're making it be like where it gets sort of racist.
I don't think it's racist when we're talking about a certain type of cultural
He posted
behavior.
a gun on Instagram. Is that what he did? Because I still don't understand what exactly happened. Nobody's told me.
Yes, there was an Instagram. What do you want to see what he did?
No, I just didn't understand if it was like a single post that showed him with a gun. Like, I don't know what it was.
You're still not listening. I told you. He already had done an incident like this earlier in the season.
Yes, that I got.
He was suspended for it.
I understand. And so now you're saying he did it again. But what it is it's he's showing a gun on Instagram.
Yeah, he's on Instagram. They're looking like they're, again, I'm telling you, there is a difference when it comes to this sort of cultural mindset of, let me flash my piece and show you what a tough guy I am, when you're basically, there's a difference between playing defense and playing offense when it comes to gun culture, as far as I'm concerned. So if your attitude...
All right, this is where I say the opinions of him are his, because I don't know where this is going.
I'm just saying that there's a difference in gun culture when you're playing offense versus playing defense. Like, hey, look, I've got a gun.
But how is that different than Lauren Boebert sending out a holiday card of her and her kids holding guns?
Lauren Boebert is a lunatic, and I'm not using her as the barometer to say, she's somebody who you should be looking up to. Anybody who is posing with their weapons and showing it as a sign of, look at what I've got, is the same to me. So if you're going to sit there and say it's different because of rap culture, no. Anybody who's flashing their piece like they think that it's all that is the same. But I'm still explaining where I stand. And listen, if people call me racist, I don't give a fuck.
No. I'm just saying, to me, if you feel the need to show off your gun, it's the same difference. I don't think it's different. I think it's the same. That's what I'm saying.
I don't, to me, if you're gonna make a video and you're gonna make it, I remember Delonte West. I remember certain players where it's to me, there's a difference. It's not that it's defensible to what both sides are doing. Gun culture is sick. Obsession with guns is sick.
Well, to me, it's the same difference. It's just you feel the need to show your weapon, you're showing your weapon. Okay?
That's true. But I do believe that there is a difference in terms of the message that's being conveyed when you flash it in a certain context. I do think there is a difference.
Well, no. Well, you're confusing the difference between a different message versus a different perception. Now, the message is the same. How people view it based on their biases is what's different.
But I don't see, you see.
What's the different message?
Well, here's a good example. Most people that are flashing guns in the hip hop culture are not people that I would normally associate with going to gun classes, going to the shooting range.
But that's irrelevant. Why does that matter?
I don't know, because I think it's the message that's being sent. I think that does matter.
To whom?
To whoever is looking up to them. John Morant is a megastar in the NBA.
Okay, so now you're talking about them as a role model and why that matters. And then I look at people that are elected people that are sending out Christmas cards showing their assault weapons.
Sure.
As equally as ridiculous. And I don't see it as like, I don't see the difference in what you're saying. I don't understand it other than you're saying it's just racial.
No, it's not what I'm saying at all.
But what is it then?
What's saying there is a cultural difference when it comes specifically to whether or not you are associating with hip hop culture.
And what that difference is basically the white world's perception of it. What you're talking about is this sort of what the bias is against it, but based on people's perception, not based on what is. So when you say the message is different, no, the message is the same. People's biases about people create a different perception, but it isn't different. It's the same. That's what I'm saying to you. You're proving what I'm saying by saying like you see it differently. Yes, but what I'm saying is what is the actual difference other than perception?
As I am stating, I do believe that the big difference with hip hop culture and rural gun culture is that hip hop culture talks about killing people, talks about defending your honor with a gun, talks about, doing, they disrespected me, so I gotta handle this situation. But they're not talking about handling this situation mano a mano with two fists. They're talking about, I gotta go to this guy's neighborhood and I gotta shoot him up. Like, that's a real thing. And that happens all over this country. And of course, it doesn't get talked about in the media, because if that was talked about, it would be talked about through a racial lens, which is not the answer. the perception is always that, well, this is a black versus white thing. It becomes a black versus white thing because of who's flashing the guns and in what context they're doing it in. This would be no different if Eminem, who was at one time the biggest rapper in the United States, would be doing the same thing, flashing a gun saying, hey, don't come mess with me.
Right.
Look what I'm doing.
Yeah.
That's not the answer.
No.
I don't see professional baseball players doing this. I don't see professional hockey players doing this. I don't see professional golfers doing this.
Well,
and quite frankly, I don't really see
but why are you yelling at me?
I don't really see professional football players doing this. But there is something about the association.
Then maybe it's a basketball thing.
It is.
Not a
Well, I do
thing.
think it is. No, I think it's a combination of the two things.
Okay. Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.